Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming to the Indiana Farm Equipment and Technology Expo. Really appreciate you being here, and we appreciate those joining us on Facebook and YouTube as well. But if you're not here, you really need to be. There's a lot of other stuff going on around here, not just the seminar stage. So come on down to Westfield's Grand Park. Don't go to the fairgrounds. We're not there anymore. We came to somewhere a little bit better. I think you guys like this place a little bit better, right? It's been pretty nice. Yes, thank you. Thank you. The applause from the crowd. Appreciate that. Hey, we are here at Westfield's Grand Park. We've had a great day on the seminar stage. We're about to wrap things up here on the seminar stage, presented by Ag Direct, Farm Credit Mid-America, and Bain Welker Equipment. Be sure to join us tomorrow as well. I hope this isn't your only day at the show. Come back and see us tomorrow. We're full again. We're doing a couple of podcast recordings. We're going to be talking about soil health, cover crops, no-till, the whole 9 yards. We'll be talking about that at, I believe, 10:30 tomorrow. And then at noon, I'm going to have Purdue Extension corn specialist Dan Quinn and soybean specialist Sean Castile. I would love it if you came down here to Westfield's Grand Park and peppered them with questions, especially ones that they may not be able to answer. That would be wonderful for me. I would really appreciate it if you could do that. So come on down. Our last presentation of the day is from Brock Benz, and I'm going to hand the mic over here to Sean Gearhart, and they're going to talk about grain bin safety. This has been such a hot topic for a long time now, and really every farmer needs to go through one of these demonstrations and presentations. So, Sean, thank you very much for being here. I'll let you take it away.
Thank you so much, Eric. Appreciate that introduction. And yeah, hey, I want to echo actually what you said earlier, especially for everybody who may be watching the stream at home. You guys have done a great job putting on this show this year and organizing it. You know, the show is full. The seminar stage has been full pack all day today. So really appreciate the opportunity to be a part of it. And we do think that this is an important topic, an important subject. Grain bin safety is a high level. Really, we're going to talk about kind of two things underneath that. So proper bin unloading is what we'll focus on first, you know, so proper bin unloading and the effects that that has on the bin when you don't do it correctly. And then finish up with a little bit about grain entrapment. So before we get started there, and I'm trying to, am I going to have, okay, thanks. So before we get started with that, I just want to do a quick introduction of Brock Grain Systems. For most of you here in the state of Indiana, we are your neighbor. So Brock Grain Systems was founded and is headquartered, and the main manufacturing facility is in Milford, Indiana, up in Kosciuszko County. So the backstory of how Brock became a company actually is attributed to our sister company. Okay, so in the mid 1950s, a gentleman by the name of Howard Brimbeck had an idea to he thought he knew of a way to make chicken feeder systems a little bit more efficiently than what was currently on the market. So he went to work doing that, and in doing so founded Chore Time. And I'm sure several of you might be familiar with that name, Chore Time. Well, it didn't take Howard very long before he realized he needed complementary products to go along with those feeder systems, namely feed bins. So a few years later, his business partner, Howard Schrock, and Howard Brimbeck, created Brock Grain Systems. So Schrock, Brimbeck combined together to make Brock. And that's the backstory and the history of how Brock Grain Systems came to be. Today, over the years, we've grown into a world leading manufacturer of grain storage, grain handling, and grain conditioning and drying products. And we're really proud, again, like I said, to be a part of this stage here today. Like I said, we are likely your neighbor. We have 3 manufacturing facilities within the state of Indiana. I've already mentioned our main facility in Milford. We also make the grain dryers and conditioning products in Frankfort, Indiana, and grain handling products, so bucket elevators, drag conveyors, roller belt conveyors, things of that sort down in Vincennes. We also have facilities in Kansas City, Missouri, Des Moines, Iowa, and Sheffield, Iowa. So can't forget about them. So again, that's a little bit of an introduction about Brock. But that's not the real reason we're here today. The real reason is about grain bin safety and how to properly unload a bin. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Craig.
Thanks, John. Yeah, so I'm Craig Smulligan. I'm a licensed professional engineer here in the state of Indiana, and I've got a couple master's degree in engineering. So that's kind of who I am and why I kind of have a ability to speak about something like this. I've been working with Brock for the past 6 years as well, and so grain safety is something that really matters. This whole topic is important again for kind of for the reasons that Sean mentioned is that you have the whole personal safety. You know, you don't want to have entrapments or anything like that. You also have grain quality that needs to take place. And then you also have the bin safety in and of itself. So we're going to do a bunch of some demonstrations here showing some of the improper ways that bins are often unloaded, and then also go over the proper ways that they are loaded. So bin safety here. The clicker. Is that advancing at all or not? Okay. Is that advanced? Okay. Okay. All right. So we have a picture here of a bin recorrugation. I don't know if you'll be able to see that at all or anything like that. Sorry, we're having a few technical difficulties here, guys. So there we go. All right. So maybe maybe this has been a bin of yours or something like that. Maybe you've seen damage like this on a structure before. But what happened here was there was a relatively new floor and sweep that got installed inside the bin. And so what happened was they didn't quite get the I'm gonna back up one more here. They didn't quite get the control rods on the rack and pinions for all the inners put together right. And so what ended up happening was all of the inner sumps were left open by about an inch. And that's what it all that it took that to cause this type of damage. There were 4 intermediate sumps in this bin, and they were all kind of cracked open by about an inch. And so what you can kind of see in this picture, I'll walk you through why this is an off-center unload situation. The lowest point of the damage is centered over the door and the unload. And that is a sign of where the grain was being pulled down the most on the sidewall. And then it kind of swoops up either direction and goes around the bin like that. And so that's kind of how we were able to deduce that this, and as well as all the sumps being open by an inch, that's kind of how we came to that conclusion on that one. So there's one case study. We've got another one here. This Leaning Tower of Vicksburg is what was the local paper called this one. They opened all of the inner sumps just completely all the way on this one. Here's another picture from the side. And now this was probably dangerous of them to take a picture like this. I would have not wanted to stand there while a bin was leaking grain, and is a pretty dangerous spot. But luckily enough, the bin didn't completely collapse. They were able to remove it later with a crane. But they were fortunate the whole bin didn't come down and cause damage to other bins or anything like that on this case. So here's a third and final case study that I kind of put together here. You might be able to see that the door is leaning in at the top a little bit, and kind of the body sheets around it on this side are are also kind of flattened out with the curvature a little bit. And what happened here was this is a larger diameter one. Um, the tunnel ended up getting pulled. Whoop. Yeah, if you can. So the tunnel ended up getting pulled, and the first sump right inside the tunnel and under the bin door area. And so luckily this was a large enough bin. They only took out a truckload, so it only flattened out a little bit and didn't cause a huge recorrugation or huge damage issue. But they still had to fix the bin later on and had to unload slowly to make sure the damage didn't spread or anything like that. So we have am I over on the videos? All right. The picture of from our manuals, that one. Yeah. All right. So what we have here is an off-center unload. This is kind of cartoonized version in most of our manuals that we have. And this, it's a pretty simple, hopefully easy to understand that when you open stuff on one side, it's going to suck in, and the higher pressure is going to be on the other side. So what we're going to do now is we're going to liven things up a bit and use our demonstration here so you can actually see the grain flowing inside the bin. So go ahead and we'll pull this one. This is so you can see here how all of it is just flowing down this one side. And there's absolutely no grain moving over here on this side of the bin at all. And so what happens here is as you continue to unload periodically from this side, is you'll continue to have less and less grain, and you'll have stuff moving down this side and more pressure on the other side of the bin. And so this is what creates the uneven pressures inside the bin. So again, I'll quick demonstrate one more time. As I pull this, see how all of this grain starts moving here and nothing's moving on that side at all. And so this is the improper way to unload, and this is a really dangerous situation for the bin in general. So all right, well, Sean refills. I've got two videos here that we were able to do to help continue to emphasize the type of off-center unload and the damages that can occur to it. So firstly, we got a model here. This model's made out of cardstock, and we filled it with sand. And so what I want you to watch for when you hit play here is watch for about the bottom third of the bin and see how long it takes for the model to kind of recorrugate and have its damage. See how fast that took? That was maybe like what, 2-3 seconds. It didn't take very long at all for the bin to really start sucking in and folding in over itself. And there's going to be a jump cut here, and they continued to unload it. And what happened was the paper got so folded over and it started to rip, and the sand started pouring out of the side of it. So this is almost exactly what can happen to grain bins. That was kind of what that Leaning Tower of Vicksburg one ended up looking like. There was that giant pile of corn sitting outside because the bin itself started to rip and tear apart. So last video here. Now, because I'm an engineer and I think everything can be solved by a computer model. So what I did was I, found a 3D modeling software and I plugged in an off-center unloading case into that model. I mean, it's 2021, everything can be done on computers, right? So what it's going to do is going to toggle, kind of go back and forth between the current steady state of a bin where nothing is being unloaded and then the off-center unload stresses. They see how drastically different it is. Like most of the bin looks okay and is in step with each other, but the area on the side, in the front where the off-center unload is happening looks looks pretty bad. You know, you can tell there's a lot of stress, different stresses going on there than there is around the rest of the bin. So now that we've looked at some of the incorrect ways to unload a bin, let's take a look at what the correct way to unload the bin is. So the correct thing to do is you unload out of the center sump. You start there, only do center unloading. Ideally, all of your other sumps are locked or somehow not able to be used or accidentally pulled open or anything like that. This helps protect you and anyone else who might be using it, safeguards something from happening accidentally. So we'll go ahead and pull the center here. See how different that looks compared to earlier? There's no movement on either side going on over here, and it's all just coming down directly out of the center. A little clogged up in the hopper here, so. But yeah, so that's how it, you know, unload out of the center. So you start there at the center, and then if you have other intermediate sumps, you'll slowly work your way out. You know, you'll then open this next intermediate sump and work your way out, and then your sweep will be unburied, and then you can use your sweep. Yeah, there's the first picture of, you know, unloading out of the center. Keeps even sidewall pressures all the way around. And then you can unlock your other sweep, other sumps, and then slowly work your way out and use your sweep. So we got a few other things for unloading a bin. This is what's known as a side draw or a side discharge. There's a few main things with a side discharge is you often have wind rings on the outside, and then you have baffles on the inside here. And so these baffles, what they do is they help route the grain in nice, even, steady states. We've cleared out our center there. So the baffles help keep the grain from moving in nice, even flows across rather than just going down the side, as you saw earlier with the off-center unload. If you use a side draw, the main thing to do is then you have to core the bin out of the center sump. So if you don't core it, you'll end up with uneven sidewall pressures or something, and cause damage to your bin. The last unloading thing that we have is an emergency or alternate sump. And so what this closest one to the center here is on this model. We give an example there where it's basically anything within the center quarter radius or an eighth of the bin diameter. So we have a 48-foot diameter. That means anything in the center 6 feet for that one can be an emergency or alternate sump. And with an emergency or alternate sump, you're trying to make sure it stays as close to center unloading as possible. It keeps it very similar to that in case your center somehow becomes plugged or otherwise inoperable. And what causes this center to usually become plugged in some start is unconditioned grain. Now, this is pretty bad if you're looking at it. You know, there's a lot of crusted frozen grain all there together. You know, that if you try to unload your bin with all that crusted together, you might have some problems. So what we want to do is we want to protect you from having to go in there and, you know, chunk that apart, and we want to protect the bin itself from having the center plugged. And then what do? Probably most people just say, well, I need to get the grain out, so I open all the intermediates. And that's where you get the damaged bins that I was showing you earlier. So please don't do something like that. Again, yeah, it's a bunch of frozen grain there. So there are some tips to prevent unconditioned grain. Firstly, have a dryer. That really helps. You can take all the moisture out, make sure you're putting good moisture grain in your bin so you can store it for however long you need. And that way it's at a good moisture before you bring it to market. Consider having temperature cables or even moisture cables. Those are both available. You can put those in your bin, then you can make good informed decisions on what you're putting when to turn on your fans or anything like that. Having proper aeration system in general, fans, floors, exhausters, that keeps you to be able to condition your grain properly. Minimize fines. You can either use spreader and or coring your bin. This keeps the fines from being down in the center by the sump. Those are almost always what cause plugged center sumps. So make sure you find a way to manage your fines. And then finally, you just want to cool the grain. You don't want to freeze it. You don't want it to get too far out of step with the temperature outside. So you make sure that you properly cool your grain. So with that, I'll be handing it back to Sean.
Thanks, Craig, and great job on that. Going a little bit further, I'm actually going to ask. Well, I guess we're going to bury the guy already. So when we did this backstage, it took him pretty quick, just a few seconds. And this is actually, I think, a real life scenario of how fast it can happen, where you're inside the bin, somebody outside accidentally turns the unload auger on. The dramatic effect of this on stage right now isn't near as effective as it was backstage, but go ahead, pull that open, and it really only takes a few seconds. See how fast he goes down, and as soon as you're waist deep in that grain, you're helpless. So it only takes really a few seconds to accidentally get pulled down into that grain, and then you're stuck. And so that's the topic of entrapment can't be emphasized enough. Don't get into the grain unless you or into the grain bin unless you absolutely have to, and make sure that use your lockout tagout procedures in order to do it effectively. I'm going to ask that we switch back to the slide deck to finish up here. So to prove that this isn't just the grain manufacturer saying this, here is what I think to be a pretty impeccable quote from Purdue University. So Purdue, I think, leads the way in keeping track of these statistics year in and year out, grain entrapments, fatalities, and so forth. And this was pulled from their 2020 report. It's well documented that there is a direct correlation between out-of-condition grain and an increased likeliness of worker exposure to entrapment. Direct correlation. I think that's as close to science or math as you can get, especially from academia. Here's their final chart on the types of entrapments or the types of injuries that come from on-farm. That first graph there is exactly what we're talking about. Entrapments inside the grain bin. And it alone, just by far and away, just hovers over all other kind of incidents and fatalities. These numbers are just absolutely too high. And so from our standpoint, we can't emphasize enough. Don't get into the grain bin. I know everybody is going to say, well, sometimes you have to. You don't. You don't actually need to. And a lot of it, like I said, starts with conditioning that grain well, storing it properly and wisely. So a couple things, last slide here. Being a manufacturer of this type of equipment, we're proud to take a leading edge in kind of education outreach. What I'm showing here is a really cool facility in Central Illinois that we really had a driver's seat position in helping to develop and seeing it through all the way to the end. So this is a training center that's used for fire departments, volunteer fire departments, basically any type of first responders. And it's in a classroom setting, climate controlled, in a controlled environment. You've got two main parts of this. One is a tall structure that fire departments, you can actually practice rappelling down inside to the grain bin. The other side of it is a controlled environment where they're literally practicing burying a person safely, probably chest high at most, and then using proper equipment to get that person out. And so This facility is top notch, state of the art, and has been used widely around the state of Illinois. I know even some departments from the state of Indiana have gone over and done training there. So, like I said, as being a part of a manufacturing facility or company, we've been really proud to be a part of that. So, with that, that wraps up our discussion on grain bin safety, grain bin operations, proper bin unloading, and appreciate that attention, and we'll obviously stick around for any questions.